That's how we own it.
What's up, family? I'm your girl, Tamika D. Mallory.
And it's your boy, Mysonne, the General.
And we are your hosts of Street Politicians, the place where the streets and politics meet. So it is like always something happening. First of all, the government is gone wild. That's all I have. In today's show, we're still sticking with the 6 episodes, the series that we're doing on gun violence. So I'm not going to take up a lot of time talking about all the other things that's happening, but people need to know that our government is in crisis. We've been in crisis for some time. We knew we would be in crisis, but we certainly are in crisis now. We now have seen that over the last weekend, there has been a lift, if you will, on the ban, or what is it? I guess it's the moratorium is the right word. The moratorium on evictions. And people were out here like, well, folks had PPP, and they had this, and they had money, and they should have paid. Okay, you can say that. But at the same time, we want the violence and the crime out of our communities. You can't have people out homeless. You can't have people out homeless who you expect to live a certain way, to live righteously, because folks are going to find a way to eat. Okay, they're going to find survival mechanisms. And so in the midst of a pandemic where they're saying that there is a surge in COVID cases, that people are getting sick, the pandemic is not over. We should not be in any way removing people from their homes at this time. Do I believe in personal responsibility? Hell yeah, we believe in personal responsibility, because I paid my bills the whole pandemic, no matter what I had to do. But at the end of the day, there's a lot of people out there that can't make that happen. And what you always say, Mice, is they're the exception, but not the rule.
Yeah. And we understand what we're dealing with, man. The government knows what's happening. A lot of people in the home for months. A lot of businesses didn't return. Businesses didn't return. A lot of people still haven't gone back to work. A lot of people are just traumatized and scared to go to work. So we have to. It takes time to undo a pandemic, to undo the long-term effects of it. The trauma that people are dealing with. So now on top of that, you're gonna add rent back, and talking about they need to pay their bills. After you suspended it, like it's like this ain't the time to do it. Especially when, like you said, there's a resurgence of COVID-19 with different strains, and people are just starting to get back to normal. So you got to give people some grace, got to give them some opportunities, got to give them a little bit of time to get back into the flow before you start threatening them, telling them they need to get out and be in the street and getting eviction notices. It just don't
People said, well, they went on vacations. I'm like, yeah, and so did landlords, right? So did some of the landlords. They took some of the money that they received and didn't do with it what they were supposed to do. Everybody is at fault. But at the end of the day, I thought they said we were all in this together. The little bit of vacation that somebody got, that they ain't been on vacation, their whole life, they probably never went to Tulum and this place and that place and Cancun or wherever. They got a little check for $5,000 and spent a little bit on a vacation, the sneakers that their child's been asking them for, a little bit of summertime in the city. And we seem to be criminalizing and demonizing those individuals. Now, the system might criminalize some folks that got them PPP loans. They might be criminalized. But we know that evicting people from their homes is a real serious thing. And we don't want to see people homeless. If nothing else, we don't want to see people homeless. But it brings me to my thought of the day. My thought of the day is, why are groceries so damn expensive? Like, is it not possible to find some type of way not to have groceries, especially healthy food? Now, some people say, well, it's not that much more to eat healthy. It is. The milk that I drink, 0% milk, right? Which I probably shouldn't be drinking it at all. And others who are extremely healthy tell me that I should be doing a whole bunch of other things instead of drinking milk. But nonetheless, the 0% milk that I drink, the fat-free milk, right? My milk is almost $9 for a half a gallon. $9. So what I'm trying to understand is like, we want people to be healthy. We're saying that America is obese. We're saying that Americans, rather, are obese. We're saying that the health crisis is this and that and pre-existing conditions and all this. And yet and still, when you go to the grocery store, a little bag of groceries, one bag could be $100 and you hardly have anything in it. How are people surviving? Because I know for me, I have the resources to do it, and I still feel uncomfortable spending the type of money that I'm spending in the grocery store. You experiencing this? Because I'm struggling.
Now groceries are very high. Like for real, every time I go to the store, I can't believe the amount of money I spend for the few things that's in the bag. Like you said, it just really does not make sense. $30 and you be having like 4 things in the bag, and those things ain't gonna last through the night. You know, so it's really crazy. Like when you look at air flights, everybody's trying to make up for what they lost. Everybody's putting double. It's like it's a drought. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like when we was in the street and you was hustling and you was selling weed, and when it was a drought, you made the weed a double 2 times what it normally was, because people knew they couldn't get it, or people knew they really needed it. The same thing they was doing with the Lysol wipes. Remember, they was charging people all types of money for things like that. So, you know, we're in those times where the economy has suffered, and the people who have things that they know are, you know, commodities and things that people want, and they feel like, you know, a lot of people got those little PPP loans, and they're gonna spend it fast. So they trying to get their money back while they feel like there's a couple of dollars out there. But all of that is drying up right now, man. It's all drying up.
It's drying up for sure, but it's kind of like, what do you do if you are somebody who's really struggling, but you're trying to take care of yourself and your family? It scares me to think that a single mother who doesn't qualify for food stamps, because they've demonized people who get any type of subsidy. So if you work on a job, let's just say you are an assistant, maybe at a college, or you're a pretty decent job where you dress nice every day, and you're going into an office and you're making maybe $17, $18 an hour, maybe even $20 an hour. That sounds good, right? That's nice. But if you go to the grocery store and most of your money is being spent on that, and also transportation, because now that people are going back to work, it is expensive to get on the train. I think the train fare is like $2.75 or something like that per ride per day. You have kids that want to have, snacks and different things. Maybe you want to get your hair and your nails done because you need to keep yourself up to be able to go to work. Your children need a haircut. How I don't understand how we could even be having a conversation about just now getting to the point where there is a debate that has not in any way been passed on $15 an hour. So it's people that ain't even making that, and they hustling every day trying to make ends meet. But then you have folks who are making above that, who are still living very far below the poverty line. And if you go to the grocery store and you have to spend $300 and $400 for your family of 4, even your family of 3, even the family of 2, just to get the things that you need to be able to have lunch every day, have dinner every day, have juice and things in the refrigerator. And don't start with washing clothes and buying like detergent, maybe, the laundry, the cleaners for you. Like this is a very expensive life that people are living. And you can see why people are frustrated, because we fix it up nice. We fix it up. You fix it up with a good crispy white t-shirt on, a nice hat. We always keep our feet fresh. I like to wear nice clothes. People look at us, and there's a level of resentment that builds up because you look like you're doing so well while your community and the people that come from where you come from are struggling. And I get why folks are so damn frustrated, because it's really expensive to survive, especially if you live in New York. And by the way, I just came back from Cleveland, and it's no better there when you go to the store.
You're right, man. It is really hard out here, and it makes those who have a little bit look like you start looking like food. Man. People get mad at you that you become targets. Like I'm telling you, like robbery is a big thing right now. You know, it's a big thing. People are robbing people because some people have looked like, you know, they progressed during the pandemic. They kept up. They look like they have more. And there's a lot of people like in the Dykeman area. You know, my little brother hangs out. He goes to a lot of these clubs, and he's telling me how like every other night you go into the club and people are getting robbed. A woman got snatched out of her car, literally snatched out of her car, and they taking jewelry. So it's at an all-time high. So you know, it's very dangerous out here for people who look like they got a little more than luxury, and then it's very hard out here for people who just don't have it. So you know, we just in some these are some difficult times, man. We're in real difficult times, and hopefully this administration and the government tries to get it together. I don't really have much faith in none of that, but we're gonna keep fighting now.
So in keeping, I mean, even talking about that, it lends itself and leads sort of right into the conversation around the gun violence that's happening in our community. And today I'm really, really happy and really honored, if you will, to have two giants with us. And so, my son, let me kick it to you and let's introduce our guest.
So as we've been promoting, this is our 5th episode on gun violence and what it's going to take in order for us to combat it. We've been interviewing and having conversations with a lot of grassroots organizers. We've had different organizers. We've had people from law enforcement. We've had government officials. And now today we want to have a panel-like discussion. And today joining us are two grassroots organizers who are really doing the work. People always ask, oh, why ain't nobody doing the work about gun violence that happens in our communities? People always want to talk about the gun violence that the police is doing. And it's really what's going on in our communities is more important. And we do that. We talk about that as well. And these are two people who are living testaments to that, whose work precede them, who have been victims, who have been family members, who have been victims, who've been surrounded by it, utilized their pain and turned it to purpose. One of them have already been on our show. We have my brother, Mr. Shanduke McPhatter, who is the founder and CEO of GMAC, Gangsters Making Astronomical Community Changes, which is an organization that he founded, coming from prison, and he understood the need to transform his life and also utilize his experiences to be one of the people who used to be the ones who started the violence in the community. Now he's the ones who interrupt the violence. So we want to say thank you and welcome to the show again to our brother Shanduke.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate y'all.
Yes, sir. As usual, this is our friend. We always have friends on the show. So let me get this right because I don't want to not say her name properly. But this young lady, I've read her bio and she is amazing as well. Joining us today is Miss Tia Bell from the Trigger Project. She is also a grassroots organizer and who focuses on gun violence. She's been impacted, family members, friends, and she utilized her pain and she also turned it to purpose. So thank you, Tia Bell, for joining us today for this in-depth discussion that we're going to have on gun violence in our communities.
Thank you, Tia and Shanduke, for being with us. Shanduke, we asked you to come back today because I think you have a very, very unique position that you sit in. Being an organizer is clearly one part of it, but I also watch, being around you often, how many men work with you who are recently returning, or you're trying to help them stay out of the street. And right now, what we're seeing happen is a resurgence in violence in our community in a way that we can't ignore it. We can't act like it's not happening. We can't turn a blind eye. It's a real serious situation. And it's cool to talk to all the folks who think they know, but there are some people who actually do know. And I think that's why we want to focus on this conversation with the two of you today. Tia, you and I recently became acquainted. You've now become my sister. I've learned how much you know, how much you've been doing. And oftentimes, unfortunately, we as women in this work are overlooked because We know that violence definitely is a larger issue for our men, but we also know that women are starting to become the fastest growing population going into prison and also having violent issues, whether it be domestic issues and or street violence issues. And so we can't ignore that. And the first show that we did 5 shows ago, we talked about and had Maggie Carey on, Shanduke and others, where we talked about women and how they are impacted by this epidemic that we are in. And so we're speaking on the backdrop of a shooting, multiple shootings or one incident that happened in the last weekend in New York City, where 10 people were shot. And I think, Shandu, you were bringing us up to speed that there were 3 people who were the alleged intended target, but at least 7 people who were hit surrounding this incident. And clearly it's serious, you know, and I think for me and what I appreciate about you, Tia, and you, Shandu, is that you guys get the intersection between police accountability and what we are fighting for there and what we're doing to raise awareness and to really curb the violence in our community. So it's so important that we talk, because if we don't, the solution from government officials will be to put more police in our communities. And we know that that will not work. So talk to us, Shandu. Let's get started with you. Just talk about what's happening, what you know that happened in New York, and then what is the organizing idea, concepts that are happening among the crisis management system and others who are working in New York to try to address the surge in violence.
All right, thank you. So when we look at the surge, we have to first be aware of the fact that we are still recovering from a pandemic. A lot of things that happened through that time went unaddressed. And one of those things we know prior to that, we had bail reform. And in bail reform, there was an attack on bail reform from prosecution where they just felt to release anybody and everybody, not really assessing the cases, but just releasing people just as this is what we're going to do since you want bail reform. So there were a lot of people who didn't deserve to be in our communities, out in our community, because they didn't receive any type of mental rehabilitation. And we have to be accepting of that. So there were also people who were released from state prisons who received no type of services. Everything was shut down, right? So imagine someone doing a year or more and coming right back into our community, and only option that they have is those in the community who are on a violent or criminal mindset, offering them up those criminal activities. So we have to really look at that as part of the problem. And a lot of trauma not being addressed, including the fact that we have a whole bunch of police brutality still happening in our community that we don't see no justice for. Recently in New York City and Corona, Queens, yes, there was alleged 10 people shot, 7 bystanders with them allegedly identifying, and I always say allegedly because I'm in Chicago and I'm getting information based off of what has been reported. So in our work, we like to go into the field and understand and get our facts to be sure who is causing the violence. So in this instance, it's been said that it's the Trinidadios. I'm gonna go with Patias because if you know state prisons, they're in our state prisons and we call them Patias. And there's a history allegedly where they also were part of the killing of Junior years ago in the Bronx. So if you look at issues, you have to understand what is causing these issues. So if there's a problem with the Patias, in our work, that's who we look to engage, right? And if we're not engaging them in those areas, there's no way we'll be able to mediate the conflicts that they're having. Because according to this last incident, they were allegedly shooting at 3 people who were shot, who are supposed to be rivals. We have to determine who those rivals are and determine what we can do to mediate any retaliation. In our community, as the crisis management system, we also have to look at those 7 innocent people and their families, and how someone may not be affiliated, may not be living no life of crime, but may feel a certain way now because they had an innocent family member shot, right? So this is what our work looks like, putting a bandage on those issues right now, while we continue to work on the bigger issue of why that group feels that they have to respond in broad daylight to a group of individuals with depraved indifference for the other lives around those individuals that they want to attack. So it's a lot of work that we have to work on preventing, not just focus on the issue after it happens.
You know, that's why I like, and I understand because we come from the same, pretty much the same background, and understanding how intricate the work is, right? Understanding that you have when you come from a gang culture, you are a person who accepts and acknowledge that he's a blood, and you bring your blood title into this work and utilize it to transform it, right? Because you identify with the culture of the gang culture, you identify with the actual rules and laws, and you apply the real rules and laws and what it was actually founded for was protection of our communities and our neighborhoods, and you transform those minds. So having those, understanding that and being able to connect with the gang culture and understanding how these things happen, who you need to talk to, how do you intercept, and understanding why we saying that it's not about police being in our communities, because they don't stop. They are unable to have that intel. They're unable to have that respect and those connections within our communities that can actually stop further violence. So I just want to commend you on that and say that's why I always say that it's definitely needed. But Tia, I just want you to give us your perspective about the violence that's going on in communities and all over. What is your perspective coming from your background and the work that you do? What are your scenes? What do you think is happening?
Yeah. I want to again just say I'm grateful to be on this platform and share my unique perspective. I like to believe that God designed my life to join this fight and really ending gun violence. And Shanduke, you said something so powerful. I don't even think I breathed. I took a breath while you were talking. But it's reaffirming, unfortunately, that our deep wounds require deep, deep, deep healing. And until we get the voice of who Shanduke is advocating for and GMAC and who Trigger is advocating for really at the table, we're going to continue to see this manifestation of despair and using the gun as a solution. The Trigger Project stands for True Reasons I Grabbed the Gun Evolved from Risk. And as a survivor, I almost lost my mom when I was 10. She was shot twice in broad daylight. It wasn't a shock, I knew who had did it. And there wasn't a Shanduke to come to me and say, hey, let me get a full understanding of what you know that happened. Let me get you on the basketball court so you can release your feelings. Let me support you, mentor you so you can figure out what you're going to eat so you don't think you're burdening your mom who's healing. I didn't have that. So just with the combination of losing friends after almost losing my mom, losing my stepdad, now losing young people, I realized that the voice of the shooter is missing. So when you say Trigger Project, you embody the voice of the shooter because we all have a trigger finger, but no one's asking the question, black or white, why if just the best guns was just, or sticks, as my babies like to say, was laying in the middle of the street. Why would some people be able to just walk past them like they nothing? And why would some people see it as a commodity, see it as a resource, see it as a language? We're criminalizing our culture and our music versus really getting to the source of our pain. And that's what the Trigger Project is about.
Tell me when you say, that it's a language. That for me, that's powerful because I know that's loaded. And I think both of y'all can talk about the language. I mean, you've already been speaking to it, but there is a language, Shanduke and Tia, that is coming out of this pandemic. And we hear it loud and clear. In fact, I've been saying that the violence that we see taking place in our communities is not really, while I understand that those engaging in it do have to have some responsibility, I think it's a mirror to all of our faces about where we have failed as a society. I think that our young people and whatever they're going through is an indication of how well we have done to give them the resources and the things that they need. So when you say it's a language, and I want both of you to talk about this, tell me what that means.
When we look at language, for me, right, we have to understand that mentality, that lifestyle, right? And when you have a lifestyle that you don't see as criminal, nothing you do is looked at as wrong, right? There's no more remorse for your actions because you're living a lifestyle that you believe everything you're doing is right. And language for me when I was in the streets was when I got up in the morning as trife gangster, I put 2 guns on my waist in Brooklyn, New York, even though there was no right to carry. And I didn't do that with the intent to go out there to shoot or murder anyone. I did that to make sure that no one would be able to shoot and murder me. So when you hear Trigger talk about the response and the reasons and why we carry guns, we have to understand that language. So if someone is growing up in Brooklyn or New York City and we know that they never had the right to carry, but all they seeing is people die at the hands of gunfire, we have to understand that the language tells them that the best way to protect themselves is to carry that gun as well.
Absolutely. I ask my young people, because young people aren't the problem, they are the resource at the Trigger Project. So my master's is in youth development. Gun violence tried to impede my life, but I went to NC State. I was first in my family to finish high school, go to college, and then tore my knee up. So you guys know what that meant to my hoop dream in my hood. But I landed in my master's of youth development. So I learned very quickly that America has this language for Black people. We got single parent household, Black on Black crime. You know, they got the language that just keeps us oppressed. And there's also a language that the CDC research that says gun violence is a disease, and all these things that sort of make us Black, make us prone to gun violence. So when I learned this, I got mad as hell. I'm a Cancer, very emotional. I'm also a young lady who was very dark and had a lot of responsibility on me because of trauma. So I refuse to be angry again. And I want to be graceful, but I just say all that to say, a gun is a tool. A gun is like a cell phone. My young people are not the problem again. They are a resource. And when I ask them to use their voice and advocate for what they're going through or what their family's going through, because the exposure to violence can lead to violence too. Just exposure. So that's in movies, that's in real life, that's in police brutality. We all saw the public lynching. Like, just exposure can lead to this disease too. So when we say language, we definitely, just like any language, it's things you're accustomed to, it's things you say, it's things you know you can do, it's the way you think. And no one in America is really understanding. There's still public safety in our way through. You know, the same day our city made announcements that certain organizations would get money to prevent gun violence was the same day our leadership put $11 million into overtime for police. So we have to get to a common language so that we can really disrupt this thing, because it's spreading viciously. And now it's becoming, the narrative is becoming that it's a young people problem, you know, but like Tamika said, what's the African proverb? The young people, in order to fill a village warmth, the young people will burn it down, you know? So it goes something like that, but that's what we're going through. And that's why I try to put young people in the front so that by 2030, they're exposed to the risk factors and protective factors that lead to being a perpetrator, a shooter, or being a victim. You know, this disease goes both ways in our community, and it's interpersonal, and we understand that, like, it's such a thin line, and they've just put us in cages. So ideally, I would love if we could go to like a health clinic and really cleanse this disease out of us, because we moving slightly in the right direction, and funding is slightly coming in our direction, but it's still not tailored for the people closest to it.
Do we think that we can just pour money on the problem and it'll go away?
I don't believe it's pouring money on the problem. I believe it's giving the justice, the funding justice that we need to the issue, right? And I talk about New York City. While we've been fighting and everyone's been behind defunding police, we still saw a city council that added $200 million to NYPD's budget. And they added funding to prevention organizations, but it nowhere matched a number of $200 million, right? And we are not getting what we are asking for, right? So they're continuing to add a divide, right, between the community and the police by not fully funding the services that's needed for our community. And when we talk about that, we talk about on a different level because we don't have enough funding to not just employ people, but to add to the shifting of the messaging, right? An example of that is Mysonne, right? When I talk about the brother all the time, I get people to understand his shift in his music, right? And his shift in his music was a determination that he made to not continue to push that music to our community. And that's where we talk about part of the problem, because we're fighting against a system that's continuing to fight against what we're doing. And our young people, just like me, the mice, and the young people coming up, and the ones who came up before us, who went through the system, who were incarcerated, who were part of the violence, it wasn't by happenstance. It happened because they pushed it into our minds at a young age. Example I like to use is music, and that's why I bring mice up in the conversation. I believe that music is more potent than drugs. That's something I always say. I used to, unfortunately, have to sell drugs. That's what I believed back then. I had to sell drugs. And when I sold drugs to people that you would never know were doing hard crack cocaine, because they just went home, went to work, came and got their crack and went upstairs, because their tolerance level was totally different. But then you have the young person who is coming up in a deprived home. I had no father, went to foster care, grew up in the projects, and the music is telling my prefrontal cortex that this is how I'm supposed to live. So music is more potent than drugs because it shoots straight to your soul. No matter what you're going through, if it's a R&B song and I start talking about, I heard it all before, a woman is going to relate to that. If she's going through something, she believes that man is lying. So it's the same difference if our young person today is throwing on the drill music. Nobody want to talk about it, but throwing on the drill music in New York City after popping that perk, there's no remorse in what they're doing because they're not even in the same mind. So working on the narrative, like what happened to the trap niggas that you talking about that's promoting these drugs in our kids' minds, has to shift. So we need the resources to be able to change the messaging. You can't drive down Manhattan or anywhere in Brooklyn or anywhere in New York City and really see prevention, mind shifting, resources for our kids and our community to be diverted to. You see everything else. No disrespect, I went to going through an airport and all I saw was nothing but 50 and Power being promoted. I was like, he don't need that much promotion. How much money was spent on that versus helping us have somebody coming into New York and to live, JFK or LaGuardia, and seeing nothing but violence prevention organizations that are in that community. When you come in, know that you have a resource when you come to that community. So we have to look at being able to fund the resources in a whole different level.
People will say, right, well, white folks have poor communities also. It's not like we the only ones that have projects and poverty and this and that. But when they watch TV and listen to their music, they have balance. They're able to listen to a little heavy metal. They're able to listen to a little bit of our hip hop and other music, but they also get to listen to things that speaks to their intelligence and helps to build them up and make them feel like they're help build their character. I even think about when I was a young girl, clearly walking into a room in a Catholic school where all of the presidents and different important elected officials and leaders were all over the walls and they were all white. They were all white. I think they had, because I lived in Harlem and I went to school in Harlem, I think Charlie Rangel was probably the only Black man, Congressman Charlie Rangel, who I love very much, but he's also a very fair-skinned man. So they basically look like all white people, and let's not even talk about all men for the most part, who were being displayed before us. It's not until recently that you get Barack Obama, but that's one. So there's a balance that while they're in school, they may be listening to whatever when they're at home. They may have drugs, they may have violence, but when they go to school, the school books, the images, everything is an affirmation versus what we receive, which is a denigration, if you will, of our communities and of our humanity.
That's right. And you spoke on it right, Shanduke, and I say that all the time. these are conversations that I have with these radio execs, you know, and I say the fact that you salute our work and you tell us that we do this work, but you don't give us the same platforms, right, to promote the work and promote the message that we promote. Artists who are talking about positivity and still have relevance and understand what's going on in the street, but giving them a different perspective to move away from that. Y'all don't give us the same platforms and the same notoriety as you give the people that's poisoning us, right? So the poison is incentivized. They have an incentive, right? Because they understand if you rap about killing and robbing, right? If you literally rob somebody and shoot somebody and you rap about the song and do a video about it, you are signed. If you look at the last probably 6 or 7 artists that they signed from Chicago, the streets know that these are real. The songs that they putting out are about real beef that happened, like literally. And they saying why these kids getting killed and all that, because they're talking about the people who they killed on the record, or they shot, or they robbed, or they did this, and the family has to see this on the internet. The internet is pretty much exacerbating this violence. They're promoting it. You got blogs like DJ Academics and them who literally gaslight violence. They literally go on their blog sites and talk about, yo, he's running around here after he shot this person. Y'all better slide on him. He too comfortable outside. Like, this is what you got. These people have never been in the streets. They have no credibility, they have no understanding, but yet and still they're able to agitate and instigate real violence in our communities. And these record companies are only signing you if that. So what we have to do, and that's why I started, I ran out and get this, is that we have to start really like guerrilla marketing again, Shanduke. Like, we have to remember we used to put posters on the walls and stickers. Like, it means something. Every neighborhood, this is where I'm starting this week. Every neighborhood, we running through the communities and we putting these posters in the stores. We putting them everywhere possible because we got to retrain the mind state. We got to boycott black murder. I can't kill my brother. They got to constantly see it. The same way they look at these commercials and they go on the internet and they constantly see visions of somebody shooting each other, and they constantly hear music about kill, I blast you, I rob you. We have to give a counter narrative. We got to be able to try to shift and try to get them back on a different trail, or else we're going to lose, because violence is promoted. It's promoted everywhere we go, and they're getting paid to do it.
Go ahead, Tia.
It was just so loaded.
We want you to kick the truth to the young black youth.
To the young black people, understand that there are moving parts around you and their relationships, that their connection and their moving parts around you, i.e. your schools you go to, health clinics, hospitals you attend, churches, the media you watch, policy, politics. There's all these things moving around you that develop who you are. And as Tamika mentioned earlier, not only have we failed you, but we haven't worked intentionally. Like Shanduke said, we're throwing money, but it's so deep rooted. Like, we need them to part seas. You cannot release a young man who's traumatized in jail for being convicted of doing a crime that in the ideology of America, crime is synonymous with choice. And we don't develop that frontal cortex until when, Shanduke? Until we 26. But how many of us are locked up for the idea that we made a choice and our brain isn't even fully developed? It makes me sick. So the media is a huge part of it. What you're talking about, Mish, is being the protection. So there are risk factors that lead to it, but there are also protective factors that is the reason why I'm standing today. I had connectedness to adults outside my family. They helped me build my resilience. But I'm 6'4", so people believed in me because they could see the potential, but every young person needs that primary prevention and protection. You wouldn't go tell a young person to have sex without giving them a talk and condoms, so we can't go out here and let the accessibility to guns be the way it is. Let the government not take accountability for the infiltration of what they've given to us, If they gave us produce, we would have been throwing a lot of fruit, you know? It would have been a lot of fruitfulness in this community, but they didn't. They gave us drugs and guns. So we understand that it is a disease, but at the same time, I want to address my Black brothers and sisters who do feel alone and tired and frustrated because you just see us taking each other's life. It's no way we're supposed to be less than 12% in this country, but it is by design, and you have to understand that it's very basic needs that were met in your life, from sleep to rest to food, to belonging, to safety, to shelter. You had things that were aligned in your life that allow you to make decisions and reach your best self. Like telling the police what you saw happen, you got to be your best self. We can't expect our community to be accountable, and when it's not a lot of self-actualization taking place. So I just think we got to give ourselves grace. We got to know that what's happening now isn't a result of our movement, because the movement has been steady, but now it's starting to take height, reach no limits. So we got to
let me ask this question. Let me ask this question. I think I see a lot more homeless young people, but maybe not. But I'm thinking, and I was in DC recently, and when I go to DC, I don't just, of course, we go protest. Shanduke comes with us and holds us down every single time that we have civil disobedience there in DC. I don't just go to that area. We always go to the hood. In fact, one of our mentors, Cora Masters Berry, the wife of the late great Mayor Marion Berry, owns whatever. I don't even know what the right terminology is, but she runs the Southeast Learning Tennis Center in Southeast DC. And she actually lives in that part of DC as well. And so when I visit with her, I happen to go past, there's a liquor store and a chicken spot and some other things that's the same in every single hood. And it's really, to me, it's painful. I won't say it's scary because I'm not scared of Black people. It doesn't matter what community we go to, we find our people and we're not afraid of them at all. And generally, what I've learned, I have people in my family who say, you can't go there and you can't do this and you can't do that. Generally, I don't care how tough a dude is. When I'll say, hello, how you doing, and look him in his eyes, he always gives me the respect and says, okay, you about something. He might try after that to get my phone number and a few other little moves that go on. You know what I'm saying? But generally, he's like, yo, okay, cool. We have a connection. But I'm seeing people who are looking dingy, broken, high, and they're young cats, real young, and young girls who look like they are already prostituting themselves at these young ages. And we know sex trafficking is an issue. So all of this, you can't ignore these things and say, we're just gonna lock everybody up. There's no way that is the solution for dealing with homelessness. First of all, in this pandemic, and my son and I talk about it all the time, right? The pandemic either made or broke you in terms of you being in the household with your family, where everybody in the house was on the schedule of being outside most of the time, and they only had to be in the same house for a few hours. Maybe dad, if he was in the home permanently, he might be out working overnight. He might be hustling overnight. Who knows? Mom has to go to work. Somebody might go to school. The pandemic caused everybody to have to come inside of the house and deal with people that they don't even really know. They may not even trust. They may not be safe around, from sexual assault to drug abuse, to just depression, to not having the proper resources. I'm trying to understand why folks don't get this. I really am. So are y'all seeing this with the young people that you're working with, or am I just, maybe I'm not, my finger is not on the pulse?
No, your finger is directly on the pulse.
Yes.
They're not paying attention to the fingers that they're supposed to be paying attention to, right? And what we see is exactly what you're talking about. And that's what we're talking about when we are discussing risk reduction in our organization, right? It's not just about identifying a shooter. It's about identifying a shooter and then working to reduce that risk of that person. And that person's risk may be different, or definitely will be different from a lot of people, right? And it could be those issues that you're talking about. And we have to now work to pull them out of that, right? And that's what we do every day. So once we lock our eyes on you, build a relationship, build a rapport, it's not an overnight success, right? We've had a recent, this wasn't spoken about recently. One of my guys got a call from a participant that we've been working with for a while, and he's supposed to be a young affiliated kid. And he called because he was in his house and he was arguing with his mother, and him and his mother always going at it, but we established a relationship with him and his mother. So one day they come to the house because somebody allegedly called the police on him, and it wasn't his mother, it was a neighbor. So he's thinking his mother called the police on him, while he is alleged to have a gun in the house, according to the call. 67 precinct is outside his house, looking out the window, ready to rush the building, but he's on the phone with one of my outreach workers, and the outreach worker gets to the scene, and because we built a relationship, a respectful working relationship with NYPD, he informed them, hey, I have him on the phone. Give me a moment. I'm going to get him out the house. And we were able to do that without anything happening. This wasn't highly reported, but contact 67 precinct, and they'll tell you this happened. And the commanding officer respected that we were able to do that, right? And after that, we had to assure that young brother, don't go at your mother, right? Because it wasn't your mother that called, even though you were arguing with her. So now we still have to work on that relationship. So this is an example of what we're talking about. And this is a kid that is continuing to have issues, but we put him in programs, and when we have him in programs, we're able to work with him, right? So we have to look at that, because he's also been outside of the home where we had to get him into a shelter at times. So we understand those issues. We need the society understand that this is how we work on bringing down the conflicts that's happening in our community. But when we're talking about our young people, we have to remember, like you said, we left them. There's a piece missing there. So we have to grab them. We have to understand what piece is missing in their life and see what we can do to supplement those missing pieces.
Yes, I do a lot of fundraising and asking and presenting and proposing, because my young people need beds. They need Legos for their brothers and sisters so they don't go rob somebody to get the money to do it. I'm competing with the streets. And so earlier you asked, is money a solution? It absolutely is, because first, I think doing things that we do should receive compensation. You know, I work as a full-time high school counselor. I'm off in the summer times. I go hard in the summer because I'm paid for my 9 to 5 and I got free time, you know, but I'm also the mother of a 3-year-old. And this work is nonstop. You know, young people don't have boundaries. They're not supposed to. You know, their asks and requests are substantial, and it may be from fixing a broken nail to doing a college application. But my time, my opportunity, and my counseling, my supervision, my team who also pours into these young people, that's the solution. And we need the government, we need city officials, we need philanthropists to really get on the side of thinking outside the box, because it may look like intervening and stopping the police, but it also may look like just giving a young person $100 because they just misplaced their zip and they want to do something to get it back. And so I needed this platform and I needed this opportunity, because I do believe public healthing our way through this is the solution. And I do believe that I am an addition to violence interruption and to just this progressive transformation that all Black cities have made. Returning citizens are running the city. And I do believe that I am an addition to violence interruption and to just this progressive transformation that all Black cities have made. Returning citizens are running the city, you know, and it's a beautiful thing. And it shows that transformation is real.
Tell us how people can support the Trigger Project. Same thing for GMAC. How can people give? You know, cash apps, whatever you have. We're also going to make sure that we put it on the screen. I want to make sure that folks know that as we are in this conversation right now with Shanduke, he has pulled away from a conference that is happening in Chicago. Again, people seem to think there's no work being done. Nobody's getting together. They don't care about gun violence. What about the violence in our community? Well, there are individuals that are at a conference right now working together on strategies. And then we have our sister Tia Tia Bell in DC. And guess what? It's not free. It's not free. It costs money to get there. I see you in a nice little clean hotel, Shanduke. You're supposed to be in that. We're not staying at the Motel 6. We're not doing that.
But let me tell you something about that. Right? I had to work on other sources of funding to make this happen for 15 of my team, right? Yes. And we submitted to the mayor's office to prevent gun violence that we were going to the conference, and they said they didn't deem it necessary. We're going to send 2 people, and they didn't understand the need for me to take my team to the National Gang Crime Research Center National Conference. And we're gangsters making astronomical community changes, dealing with issues of gang violence. There's always something there to try to prevent us from moving forward, but we have to continue to fight for solutions, right? So in that, we had to make it work, and that's what this work is about. But at the same time, not just on that level, if we're talking about working on with individuals in our community, if look at the incident with the 10 people shot. If we had a pulse on that neighborhood and we knew that conflict was brewing, it takes resources to take those 2 groups who have no space to mediate. I want you to think about the conference. Nobody wants to sit on the corner with 10 people on this side, 10 people on that side, everybody got guns and trying to mediate a conflict. It's not gonna work. There's no mediator there. Somebody's upset, somebody, F this, so we have to create mediation spaces for them wherever there's conflicts or gangs or whatever cliques in our city. And in that, there's times where we had to take a group of individuals and sit down and pay for dinner or lunch to have that conversation, then go get the other group and have dinner or lunch with them, and they don't want no pizza because they in the streets hustling, they don't want no pizza, and then work to bring that group together, right? And these are different types of resources. And just like the sister said, how can I not have to count on the city if I see a person who's upset about 150 zip that somebody got them for, and if I know I could save a life by being able to say, here's a gift card for $200, bro. It's not even that serious, right? We got that. Yo, bro, don't do that again. You see what I'm saying? He still wanted to do what he wanted to do regardless, but we want you to know that our work is preventing that. You made a bad mistake, and let's work with you to make sure that you don't make mistakes like that, because that's going to lead to somebody dying. So we have to look at all these things and understand that the resources are extremely important. And on top of that, because I've been attacked about my salary before, and they don't know the level of work that I do, right? I'm the CEO, and I'm in the training too with my team, right? It doesn't stop. But it's about also understanding that this is what I do 24/7. There's no stop point for me. And in that work, I have to provide for a family. And I cannot be looking like I'm starving in the street, hurting, and telling somebody that the positive life is the way to go. And man, listen, I'm not trying to hurt like, y'all looking out the bar. I'm not with that, right? That doesn't make sense to the people. So it's about understanding that there's value in the work of who we are and what we do, and that it takes resources to keep us working, right? Because I got kids. So how do I provide for my kids? I chose this work, right? And I chose to build up the ability to be able to finance myself and anybody else in the community that I could finance to do this work. And that's where we have to grow. If we grow more preventionists, if we're able to fund more preventionists on different levels, it's not just about the street work we're doing, but on different levels, the mental health perspective, right? That's not getting the resources that it needs. So when we get people to understand we need so many different levels of resources to deal with these issues, then we'll really start to see the changes that we're looking for and we're working towards.
I say that all the time. I said those directly impact the solution, man. And like you said, if most of these young kids are committing acts of violence out of poverty. Poverty is violence. And you in these communities, a lot, they on the corner hustling and scamming, making a couple $100. If we have organizations, and I say all the time, like you say, gangsters making astronomical changes, gangster is stopping violence, right? When you gangster, you can tell somebody, yo, we not beefing. Ain't nobody shooting on this block. We're going to hold this block down. The lady's going to feel safe. The kids going to feel safe in the park. And when we able to fund that mentality, when we able to give these young kids that the ones who have the reputations in the hood, the up and coming ones who would normally have been the shooters, and say, look, we want to fund you to make sure that this block is safe. This is your block. You say it's your block. We making sure we don't need nobody shooting out here. We make sure these kids got opportunities. They got resources. They got after school. They got basketball. They got traveling teams. All the things that keep you out of the streets. Like if we can fund our communities to do those things, then we can change the narrative. Then we recreate what cool is. Right now, cool is you the shooter and you man down somebody, or you caught a stain, as they said. That's being cool. So when we start saying, yo, the cool dude right here ain't going to jail. You know what I'm saying? He ain't going to jail, and he got more money than you, and he cool. He got the same girl you trying to get, and he ain't doing nothing negative. Then we can compete.
I told you my message is to take the positivity out of negativity and put the positivity in positive, right? Exactly what you said. We have to now show them, yeah, you see me, I'm looking good. I might got on pair this and that. Yeah, I'm doing positive, right? I got people who see me now like, you're a rapper? It happens all the time. You know, I got a chain on that looks like a rap or something, right? And I say, no, guess what I do? I prevent violence. And they all struck like, you serious? Yes, right? The perception, right? So this is what we have to get in. Going back to what you said, Mike, think about, and this is what we got to get society to think about. Think about going to all these neighborhoods with the resources to say, all right, you, and you, and you. I know you got reputation out here. I know they respect you out here. I'm going to make sure that you have a yearly salary to make sure these shootings do not happen. So when you walking through the neighborhood, listen, don't mess up my money with no shootings, right? That's the mindset we got to have, right? You a gangster, right? You saying you a gangster. All right, as a gangster, you should be able to tell, son, don't shoot out here. We're not doing that, right? Don't mess up my money. Look at it how you want to.
Especially when women and children are outside.
Especially.
Because that just has gone out the window.
Especially. And that's the messaging, right? One step at a time as we get them to understand, one, don't shoot. Two, if you have a problem and you feel that you have to respond, we want to find an outlet for you. But if you feel like that's the mindset says we got to protect our women and children. So that is our main messaging, right? If somebody is not of that life, then you should wait for any type of action. I don't care if it's a fight. You don't go up into a public restaurant and engage in a fight, because you're now going to engage people who have nothing to do with that, and an innocent person will get hurt. So the messaging has to change overall, right? The people who are pushing this energy, we have to reach out to, including our state prisons. I want us to remember that there are people who are sitting in jail with life, oppressed, with no money, and they're using their reputation, their status, all of that to push those young brothers in the street to keep moving like that, because that's all they got, right? So we got to get on top of them as well.
Give us your Cash App, your information, how do people donate to GMAC? And Tia, you take us out.
Yeah, you can find GMAC at www.gangsta, GANGSTA, Mackin, MACKIN.com. And our donation button is right on our page, PayPal. You can find us on there. Look up Shanduke McPhatter to see the work that we're doing in New York City and what I'm going to do for Brooklyn as a whole.
Brooklyn.
Bless you, brother. Again, in a perfect world, we would be able to operate in a way that is an asset to who we're serving, not the grantor, you know. But I'm Tia Bell, founder of the Trigger Project. Check. Two true reasons I grabbed the gun, evolved from risk. We're the voice of the youngins and the shooter. And our website is www.thetriggerproject.org. We're on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at The Trigger Project DC. And we do have a Cash App because we're not that big yet. So it's $ Trigger Project. And you are donating to and supporting, again, the nourishment, the enrichment, just the betterment of the young people that I serve.
So we link, sister, and work together.
Yeah, y'all got to connect, man. We want to thank y'all for being a part of this conversation. Continue to do the work you do, man. We do the work so we understand what it takes. We understand how underfunded this work is, how unglamorous it is, how it's criticized. You know, I understand definitely what Shanduke goes through, being somebody from that life, coming from the streets and really wanting to do something better. And people don't want to see you do better. They don't want to see you evolve. They don't want to believe that you can evolve because you're able to utilize, you know, colloquialism and understand the language and understand and wear the uniform of the culture and be effective and really change.
I want you to know that when they're attacking you and they don't believe in you being able to do what you do, one of the main reasons is they don't believe in themselves and they can't do nothing but ridicule someone else.
Family, we want to thank y'all so much.
Yes.
You took a lot of your time today. This is going to be a really powerful episode that I think a lot of people will gain information. And, you know, generally we do 10 minutes, 15 minutes. It's kind of moving along quickly because we do live in a society and in a time where everything in media is fast. But today we wanted to slow it all the way down and really be able to give folks the opportunity to, YouTube, the opportunity to express the real nitty gritty of what's happening. Anybody who wants to get this thing right, if you are somebody who's out there and you say, listen, I have power. I am a corporate leader. I am a philanthropist. I'm an elected official. I'm whoever, and I have the ability to make a change. These folks know what they're talking about. And these are just two of thousands of people across this nation who do the work every single day. And they know not just the communities, but they know the blocks, they know the buildings, they know the apartments, they know the people, they know the hospital, they know the intricate details, and they need our support. So Until Freedom, our organization is, you know, working very diligently. My son is leading the campaign to boycott Black murder. But also Street Politicians as a platform. These 6 episodes, I'm proud of them, my son, because, you know, we really have focused in and honed in on what we know. But Street Politicians will not stop here in terms of getting out there and using our platform to share a message about the work. We have to do it for ourselves. We can't wait for anybody else to tell our stories. 2 very, very powerful individuals.
That was dope, man. They had a little synergy there, you know. They had good energy, man. They both respected each other. Like this work is, you know, it's not glamorized, you know, it's not even understood at times. But when you see people like them who really are passionate about the work, who come from the community, who understand, like when you listen to them, you know that they understand what's needed to stop violence in the community. They have the right level of passion, skill, and love that is needed, man. That when I'm listening to Tia, I can tell these young boys and girls sit around her and she treats them with love and tenderness, and she pours into them, and she wants those resources to be able to give to them. Listening to Shanduke, I know that he really wants to change. I know, you know, he identifies with his own mistakes and you know, being led astray and the mind state that it took when he was involved in that street life. And he really wants to be able to give back and redirect a lot of our youngsters in our communities right now. So it's really dope to have conversations like that with people like that.
Yeah, I felt like there was, as you said, synergy between Tia and Shanduke that's really important, right? It's like this is the first time that they met, but they talked about that language and they both speak it. And you would think, well, if you didn't know that they just today on our platform had their first conversation, if you didn't know that, you would think they've been working together for years, because the model and the depth of knowledge is the same, yet different places and spaces mean that you have to be creative in how you approach things. And we can learn from one another. I think that there is something to be said about to me, I felt like they were in a beautiful dance in conversation. It flowed so well that at times I lost myself in trying to understand and digging deep with what they were saying, because There was nothing fake about it. It's extremely authentic, and it's coming from a place of real understanding. And you can only get that understanding when you're out there knocking doors, talking to people, saving lives, and really working with our people. And guess what? None of us are perfect, right? I'm sure that within their organizations, within their lives, they struggle with all types of things. I think we're all constantly in a battle with ourselves for, how can we do better? How can we be stronger? How can we support more? How can we be supported more? But at the end of the day, I know for sure that these two individuals are doing some real powerful work. And the other thing I was going to say is that there are other folks that I reached out to and you've reached out to. And not long after we talked to them, there's some drama. Oh, why did y'all come to my town and you didn't call me? Or why did you do this? Or, whatever, which we try to respect people all the time. And when they say, why did you come downtown? And we make sure that we work hard to mend those relationships when we feel it is necessary, and when those individuals have a certain level of respect that we respects, right? So, but the thing about Tia, and why I know we're not crazy, is because as soon as I reached out to her, she was like, we have to link. All of these connections have to be made. I'm gonna introduce you to my people, you introduce me to yours. She never ever started with the, oh, well, y'all came to DC one time and stepped on my toe and hurt my mama's back and did this. It was straight from the beginning. Yo, what y'all trying to do? Tell me more about who you are. And we jump right in. And you could see that energy from her in this conversation, which tells me that it's a lot of other people out here that really don't have our community's best interests at heart.
And that brings me to what I don't get. I don't get why people see the need to try to hate or tear somebody down that's doing work that they don't do. That they're not even willing to do. Like if you look at most of the people who criticize, brothers like Shanduke or brothers like myself or sisters like you, who literally are on the front line doing this work, they are doing nothing. And I don't understand how people think that they even have the authority, they have any level of credence to critique people who are actually doing work. Like, this work is a day and night job, man. When Shanduke was breaking it down, how this is his lifetime's work. This is his lifetime's work. I've seen an article in the paper about Sean King and his house and him having a house, and people want to criticize. And it's for me like, well, why should a man who gets death threats, who puts his life on the line, who we seen do work to get people off death row, who we seen raise money for people who's been in jail to come home and buy them houses, who we seen raise money for different situations and people, we've seen him fight, and get police officers who have done things, identified them, found the number of them, found people who are wronged and somehow got the address and got them charged. Like, when people literally are doing work to that significant and that real and that threatening to your own life, why should they be starving? Why should we not want to see them happy? And why do people, what does it get? What does it give you to tear people down and hate on people that are doing work? Literally, even if you don't agree with everything. Like, it's people that don't agree with everything. But when I see somebody is doing something, especially something that I'm not willing to do or able to do, or don't know how to do, I could critique it or criticize it, like, oh, well, I think this and that. But at the end of the day, I'm not trying to tear you down, because I know whatever it is that you're doing, if I'm not able to do it or doing it, and it's actually helping or done something to somebody, attest to the fact that you're really doing work, I don't have anything negative to say about that. As long as it's about evolution and it's about saving our communities, it's going to build, and it's about community, then I'm all for it, man. And I think more people should have that mind state.
You want to know what I think?
What?
I don't get it.
You don't get it? Because it ain't to be.
Because Because it ain't to be got.
That's it. Because if we don't get it, we ain't supposed to get it because it ain't to be got. So once again, we had another dope show. Make sure that you follow Shanduke, McPhatter, GMAC, and Tia Bell, the Trigger Project, doing real phenomenal work. You hear it, you see who they are, dope individuals. And I am your host, Mysonne. This is Tamika Mallory. She's not gonna always be wrong, and I'm not gonna always be right. But we will guarantee you 100% of the time, we will both always be authentic.
Peace.
Peace. Number one show.
That's how we own it. That's how we own it. That's how we own it.